Good morning, Breakfast with Bacon fans. You may recognize my guest's voice. You may not recognize his face. The last time he was on my show, it was actually on my radio show. So I've been doing podcasts alone for, I think, almost two years. And but he has a very important message that we wanted to get out to you today. My guest is Dr. Chris Clagett. He's a military retiree, 32 years as a doctor in our wonderful military. And he worked in the area of preventive medicine and public health. And he is still a man who is concerned about public health. And what we're talking about today is very important. And so I was grateful when he reached out to me because I want all of you to know that we have a mission for you. He is one of the 231 signers of the Declaration of Accountability. Is that of military accountability? And by the end of the show, we want to motivate you to get you to sign the petition. They've posted the letter that they've written, and it's a public letter. You can't you can't write the letter or anything. You can read the letter, but we need more signatures on the petition. Dr. Clagett, first of all, before I go on, thank you for being a guest. Number two, thank you for your important work. And number three, why are you motivated to do what you're doing?
Well, Christine, thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to your audience. We live in interesting times, and great events are happening, I think, both good and bad.
Yeah.
I'm happy to describe one of the great events to you today. So on the 1st of January at 4 a.m. in the morning, an email went to the Joint Chiefs of Staff with an attached letter that the 231 current and former military members pledged to seek accountability for them, to hold them accountable for what we regard as lawless actions, violation of U.S. law, denial of constitutional rights for military members. When we join the military, we do give up some rights, but not all of them. And they have denied constitutional rights, the specific ones being the right to refuse to participate in medical experimentation without informed consent, their right to due process, their right to equal treatment under the law, the right against reprisal when true wrongdoing is reported. All of these have been committed against military members.
Yeah.
There are the 231 of us, though, by ourselves. We cannot hold flag and general officers accountable for their lawlessness. What we do is, the letter is actually addressed to the American people. So the full title of the document is An Open Letter to the American People Demanding Military Accountability.
And by the way, the link to that letter is in the show notes. So I do suggest that each of you go and read the letter. It's not lengthy, but it's powerful.
For anybody listening that wants to, open a browser and go there now, it's www.militaryaccountability, all run together, no space, militaryaccountability.com. They cannot sign the letter, but there is a petition there that any American can sign, and we invite them to sign because it's a tangible object that we are creating to show our politicians, our elected representatives, that the idea that we are advocating does have support from we the people, and that we would like them, we demand that they rectify this wrong or be replaced.
Yeah, and you've got a large chunk of signatures on that petition already. How many thousands do you have?
The last time I checked, there were over 15,000 signatures, and that was over the weekend. So it's been growing steadily. There is we have been told that some people are reluctant to sign because they think that it's a an intelligence operation by the government to identify people that are displeased with the government and then start tracking them.
Let's be
And
fair. I mean, that's something, sadly,
it
in
is.
this year, 2024, people have to be afraid of, because we're looking at this J6 mockery. We are looking at people getting thrown in jail for praying outside of abortion clinics. We are
Yes.
now being arrested for what we're thinking inside of our heads without speaking. So it's a very real fear, I think, for most people. So for people to overcome that fear, what would you say to that? Would you say, yeah, it might be real,
Yes.
but
And yes, exactly. It might be real. What I would say to them though is we named a good number of admirals and generals by name. The document would have had much less power, if we had put their names on it and left ours off. So we put our names on it also. And so what we are asking is that the American people join us and in putting their names on the demand for justice, redress, and accountability.
yeah.
So what I'd like to go to though is part of the lawlessness, and this is not did not originate within the Department of Defense. This was FDA.
What do you mean? The letter itself was originated with the
No,
FDA?
the precursor. So in 2021, there were some biological products
Those things
authorized for
that we
use.
had to put here, right? Yeah, and we're being careful
Biological
of what we
products.
say, because we know that this censorship
I call
exists.
them gene agents. The FDA called them something else. I call them gene agents because that is what they contained. They contained a full gene that coded for an entire functional protein, a piece of the replicating virus, and hijacked the injected person's cells to produce this foreign protein. This was never a good idea, because when our cells produce a foreign protein,
They fight
the
it, don't they? The
immune
cells.
system assumes that cell is infected by a virus, or it could be cancerous. The immune system fights tumors as well, and destroys those cells. And so to inject someone with a gene coding for a foreign protein, every cell that begins to produce that protein invites immune self-attack down upon itself. And this is a large source of the adverse reactions that we have seen.
Right.
So I'd like to, you may remember back in 2020, when the
whole situation started in
whole
March.
situation started, and President Trump got on national television and said, well, we got this flu coming out of China, but not to worry, we got a good treatment for it. It's called hydroxychloroquine. And instantly, HCQ, as we like to abbreviate it, because the full name is a mouthful, HCQ became the equivalent of Drano or fishbowl cleaner. Fishbowl cleaner is the molecular name is chloroquine phosphate. So they both have chloroquine in them, in their name. And you may recall there was a famous murder of a wife murdered her husband. There was an elderly couple. They did not get along well. And the wife, being a bit Machiavellian, convinced her husband to swallow a good glassful of hydroxychloroquine, not hydroxychloroquine, chloroquine phosphate, actual fishbowl cleaner.
Wow.
Because she said, well, the President Trump says this is a really good idea, so we should both take some. She mixed his in some juice, fruit juice, and then took a little bit herself. They figured out that it was a murder because his blood level was 100 times higher than hers. He died, and she didn't. She survived it. But the media
Try to associate the two, right?
conflated chloroquine phosphate, the fishbowl cleaner, with
With hydroxychloroquine.
hydroxychloroquine, one of the safest pharmaceuticals ever manufactured.
Yeah,
Approved.
it's been in use over 65 years, even for pregnant women and nursing mothers.
Yes. Hydroxychloroquine is one of the most benign pharmaceuticals ever made. We can give it to the young, the old, pregnant women, nursing mothers, and now we give it to the immunocompromised. The largest consumers of HCQ in the United States today are people with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, two autoimmune conditions. So we can. There's no one who has an a priori contraindication to HCQ. You would have to take HCQ and then demonstrate some allergic reaction,
right,
in order for you to have a personal contraindication for HCQ. But with the tacit consent of FDA and CDC, HCQ became Drano or fishbowl cleaner in 2020. And then,
and yet when I caught that thing in 2020, I
Mhm.
popped a hydroxychloroquine and my fever went from 104 down to normal in 24 hours.
I call it the Franken virus.
Yeah, okay.
The
Yeah,
Franken virus.
it was killing me, and then gone.
Yeah, and I had a similar experience with another pharmaceutical, ivermectin, which was approved in 1987. Its primary purpose was as an anti-parasitic for the intestinal parasites.
Yeah, and then they tried to say that's all people taking horse stuff and how horrible it can be and the
Horse paste.
dosage, and again, they found any way they could to demonize it.
FDA approved it in 1987 for human use, and we used it exclusively in humans for years before anyone thought to give it to livestock. And then only when supply became great enough. But we've administered over a billion doses of ivermectin worldwide, and it's got again, like HCQ, it's got one of the most benign adverse reaction profiles of any drug ever manufactured.
So we knew this was happening, and then what they do instead? Just I think a lot of my viewers are really aware of a lot of that.
Good.
Is that what we're talking about?
Good. So now, for an emergency use authorization to be issued, the legal requirement is that there be no alternative therapy.
So they tried to say there was none, and those two things didn't work, and
they artificially created that condition by making HCQ, Drano, and fishbowl cleaner, and ivermectin horse paste that humans should not use. Ivermectin is a second-line treatment for infants with licensed scabies. For the first choice is something else, but as a second option, you could use ivermectin in infants,
right?
At least maybe 6 months old or older. So they artificially created it, and they enforced it by threatening the licenses of
the doctors that prescribed it. Right.
That's right. Through the state medical boards and the national specialty boards. So if you're an internist, that board is not state-based, but it's national. And those boards have the power, they have a plenary power to yank or suspend a license or a certification in a specialty for someone that does not meet standards. And that's exactly what they did to a number of physicians, and the rest got their meaning. And so doctors, I was contacted recently by a woman that heard me on a podcast, and she's a retired ICU nurse. So she's very knowledgeable. And she told me how a number of physicians that she consulted about her adverse reactions, she got the gene agent in January of 2021, both shots in that month. And within 3 weeks began having symptoms. And over time, she had more symptoms and sought medical care from different specialists about them. And she told me that privately, they would acknowledge that the gene agents were the cause of her symptoms, but that never went into her medical record, and they never specifically treated her for those things. And she was very frustrated. And so that is the state of affairs in the medical community in the United States today.
Right.
Your
Yeah, because all the
document-
good ones that fought against it or wouldn't accept the lie left. And so you're
they have been
left with a
largely
lot of,
driven out of medical practice
and out of the military.
and out of the military.
And that's why two of you who signed this letter, this declaration, are actually military medical doctors. You are retired. The other one is still active duty today. She
That is
put her
correct.
John Hancock on that letter at great risk, I would argue.
Yes, the active component signers are putting their careers. It is almost guaranteed they will never see another promotion, any of them.
Exactly. But they
And,
were willing to put integrity above their own personal wealth.
yes,
Yeah.
and that is true. The so I wanted to say is, we talked about the state medical boards, but the military was important to the entire fraud because for the last several decades, the military has been both a change agent and a social laboratory in American society. Different administrations, predominantly beginning with President Obama, stalled under President Trump, and now resumed with vengeance under President Biden. They have induced change into the military, and what happens in the military spreads to the rest of American society, because the military say, "Well, see, the military is doing this." It's kind of a stamp of an imprimatur,
Right,
and approval. And so we've seen this with critical race theory, although that one did not start in the military, but it has it's been useful for the purge of under President Biden. Has been useful for the purge of military members under in the ranks.
Right.
Obama started it in the flag and general officers. He fired more flag and general officers than almost any president before him. Not widely covered by the news. Had President Trump done that, we would have heard all about it.
Well, we're still hearing about it, and he hasn't been, president or sitting in the presidential seat for the past, almost 4 years.
Right.
And they still can't get him out of their craw.
Yes, that's right. So the purge has continued. I think what they're seeking to do is drive out basically patriotic
good guys.
members. Yeah. Yes.
So if it's only two people because I think we all agree with you, but if it's only two people that are military, there's only two people that are medical doctors that are military. But of the other signers, we have military members, officers enlisted. We have people from the FDA. We have, who else has signed this?
Don't think there's anybody from the FDA.
Oh, I thought that's what you'd said earlier. I apologize.
Right. They're all the signers are current and former military.
Got it.
The former are, I think the bulk of them are retired. Others are non-retired veterans who, served a number of years and then got out. And then a small sprinkling of still active members.
Which God bless those men and women. God bless them. Because I know that they've been trying to get military people back in that they forced out because of this gene therapy. And only 3% have accepted it. Only 3%. The other 97% are like, forget you. You hurt us. We've started new lives. It just shows how desperate they are too, because of what they did. But these people learn. The other 97% are like, no, we've seen what you're capable of. We don't trust you. Right. And there is no governmental trust.
And they did not extend that invitation to the military members who resigned early, to left on their own rather than be forced out. So the invitation to come back to military service was only for those who were forced out against their will. But there has been no offer to correct administrative actions taken against them. For example, one of the signers named Brianna Cespedes, Army, left at the rank of E4, was threatened with a dishonorable discharge, and unless she left on her own. And then when she agreed to leave on her own, they gave her what's called a general under honorable discharge, a general discharge. So when anyone who leaves military service gets a little piece of paper called the DD 214.
Yeah.
Many people will be familiar with it.
Yep.
And one of the important blocks in that document is the characterization of service.
Yeah. Honorable, dishonorable, other than honorable.
That's exactly right. And so if you have anything other than an honorable characterization of service, that has consequences to employment for the rest of life. And so this young woman is, she looks, I don't know her age exactly, but she looks south of 30 years old. And so she's just starting life, and they have given her a significant handicap in finding employment. And there were as many as 80,000 Guard and Reserve members who chose to leave rather than take the gene agents. And of course, they were harmed as well. I don't know that they were all given other than honorable, characterizations of service, but they were working for a goal. They wanted to serve their country. They eventually looked forward to a small retirement pension in case of reservists, and now that's gone. One of the signers, who's one of the main proponents, retired at 19 years.
Wow.
That's Lieutenant Colonel Brad Miller, former Green Beret. Retired at 19 years.
Just in case you guys aren't aware of how the military works, it's an all or nothing thing. You get to 20 years, you get your pension. You 19 years and 364 days, you get nothing. And so for this person of such great honor and rank and time to get out at 19 years is huge, huge. Yeah. It's, I can't even begin. So Dr. Clagett, so I know you and I could keep talking about this, but a lot of the things we're talking about, my viewers, your friends, we're already aware of much of this, and we're very angry. So why now? This has happened. The thing that brought all this on started just under 4 years ago. This military purge happened, starting about 3 years ago. Why the letter now? And do you think it can actually work? Obviously you must, or you wouldn't have written it. So
let me take those questions in order. Why now? Because in some ways the document, the letter is written deliberately, consciously, to be analogous to the Declaration of Independence. I'm going to paraphrase it because I'm not looking at it, but it's when in the course of human events, it is occasionally necessary to strengthen the faint-hearted, admonish the wicked, strengthen the faint-hearted. It's from 2 Thessalonians, or 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 Thessalonians 5. So why now? For 2 years, different military members have submitted complaints of wrongdoing by superior and commanding officers. Members of the medical departments, the service medical departments, have submitted reports of alarming rates of medical conditions or suspected adverse reactions to the gene agents. And this has fallen on deaf ears. In the case of Lieutenant Colonel Long's experience.
And she's the active duty doctor who signed this.
She is a flight surgeon for the Army. Okay. So she cares for people in flight status. And she was seeing an alarming rate of people in flight duty who had medically disqualifying conditions for flight duty. And so she was what's called downing them. So she was removing them from flight status. And she saw about 3 people one morning and removed them all. I don't know what conditions they had, but there were 3 in one morning. And by afternoon, she was removed from seeing acute care patients in flight duty. And she was told she would not see any more patients in flight duty, but I think they put her doing, routine
Pushing
physicals.
paper. Yeah.
Yeah, routine physicals, which have to be done periodically. And other members who have access to the Defense Medical Epidemiologic Database, we're querying that database. You can query by condition, and then say, well, who has this time frames, everything you can do with the database. And they were saying we're seeing alarming increases in numerous categories of medical problems,
Right.
Central nervous system problems, cardiac problems, hematologic problems that would interfere with military members' ability to do their jobs. And the military, it must be reminded, is a predominantly young and
It's the healthiest
healthier
of our country.
and healthier than
Because they have to go through
average population.
rigorous tests
Mhm.
just to get in, physical
That's
tests.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so for this relatively young, healthy population to be having these
This many
alarming
problems.
increases, and all starting in 2021, effect follows cause.
Mm-hmm.
A following B does not prove that B caused A, but that's the first requirement. And
Right.
and then the duty would be to make sure that, well, that wasn't the cause, but that has not been done.
Right.
Both either in the military or in the nation at large.
And that's why this letter was drawn up now, is because no one's doing anything.
Because military members had finally decided that the proper internal channels had been exhausted. And so we had no recourse but to go to the larger American people, because our military members' complaints, reports of wrongdoing, reports of problems were falling on deaf ears.
Yeah.
The leadership was part of the problem.
So angering.
Right. So there's another aspect of this, and this is why we accuse them of lawlessness. So drummed into every military member is that they have a duty to obey all lawful orders and to refuse to obey all unlawful orders. We also have a tradition of civilian control of the military. Our civil government runs the military. They tell the military what to do. That is a great tradition. But when the civil authority, beginning with the commander-in-chief, order the generals and admirals to perform some unlawful action, their duty is to resign and protest.
Right.
We do not mutiny, we do not rebel, but we do not obey. We must not obey. So they should have resigned in protest, but no, they chose to protect their careers and not only obey the unlawful order, but coerce subordinates into doing the same.
Yeah.
And so they're guilty. And we have there were numerous incidents, even from the Iraq War, when I was I deployed to Iraq twice. We had instances of junior members prosecuted for war crimes, essentially, and the colonels who and majors and captains who gave those orders were not prosecuted for the same war crimes. We're told that the sergeants and corporals, they were all loose cannons. They were the one, committing atrocities,
right?
Which is not the case. They would never do that because they know that they can get in trouble for that sort of thing. and I will point out to some people, they know this military history. The USS Stark received an Exocet missile 25 years ago or more. The skipper was asleep in his cabin stateroom when the missile struck the ship. It was cashiered anyway, because as the commanding officer of the ship, it was his duty to ensure that his officers were properly trained. What they had done is they had not enabled the ship's anti-missile defense system. Okay, so it was their failure, but his fault. And so the specialists and sergeants who are, doing things that we now call wrong, we blame them, but not the captains, majors, and colonels on top of them.
Yeah.
That
protect themselves.
Even if they did not issue the order, they should have
Yeah.
They should have been held accountable for it, for permitting it, to making sure that the sergeants and corporals knew not to commit such crimes, but they did not. So the admirals and generals are guilty, and I think actually the entire generation of admirals and generals on active duty from 2021 onward are guilty and should be held to account. We do not claim to be their judge and jury, but such lawful authority should be convened. It would be called a general court-martial convening authority. The president has such authority. The Secretary of Defense has such authority, and I believe the service secretaries have such authority. It may go lower than that, but at least those people would have general court-martial convening authority over admirals and generals, even if they are retired.
So we're bringing this part up to say that those people right now have power and should be implementing that power to go after those who kicked out the military unlawfully.
And it may be that this is going to be a long haul campaign.
It may be.
I have no doubt that, or I should say, I have no confidence that the service secretaries and the defense secretary appointed by the current administration will take this action. They will need to be replaced.
Yeah.
And then thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Yevgeny Vindman, who you may remember is the brother of Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman. Do you remember him? He was the one who was listening in on President Trump's phone call with the president of Ukraine, who accused President Trump of blackmailing the president of Ukraine in order to investigate wrongdoings in Ukraine. Well, Yevgeny Vindman is an Army JAG. He's an Army attorney, legal officer. And he very conveniently wrote an article a few years ago about how the Uniform Code of Military Justice and U.S. law could be used to recall Lieutenant General Mike Flynn back onto active duty from retirement to face court-martial.
Wow.
He laid it all out. Thank you, Colonel Vindman, because that will be our blueprint.
And that's what you guys are trying to follow. You're taking that upside down, saying, okay, this is what we want to do to you guys for what you did to us.
We are going to use the law.
Yeah. The law, legally, based on our Constitution, based on military law.
That is right. That is right.
Yeah. And so, I mean, again, I think this is the question I ask a lot. Do you think petitions work?
Normally, petitions, it depends on the purpose for which they're used. People get surveys and petitions to do this or that, support this cause or that. usually the real purpose of those petitions is to identify like-minded people for
Right.
later follow-on solicitations for donations.
Right.
We are not seeking anybody's money. If this whole movement starts and stops with us signing a letter and generating a petition, we will have accomplished nothing.
Right.
The purpose of the letter and the petition signed by our fellow Americans, and we need lots and lots of them, is to have something to point to politicians who see those signatures as votes.
Right.
And we need the politicians to take action. Now,
Yeah, and if you have a
take
million
action-
signatures,
whether
and
they
you're like,
take
ooh,
action because they think that action is the right thing to do,
or because they're
or
afraid
they
of
take
losing
action
their seat.
because they really want to keep their political career going,
Yeah.
we don't really care. We would hope that they'll take action because it's the right thing to do and their conscience tells them to do that. But if they don't, we'll take the support for whatever reason they offer it.
Yeah.
But the whole point of the letter and petition is to pressure congressional representatives and senators to take action. In fact, some of our members, some of the signers, are seeking federal and state office.
Excellent.
Yes, and what we hope to do is to gradually recruit more allies to seek more federal and state offices.
Right. Get rid of the bad
mean,
guys, put the good guys in.
Right down to the dog catcher, school board,
Well, you know what's really
county-
funny, Dr. Clagett, is it's actually the opposite way, is that those are the positions of power. We look so much at
Yes.
the president, the vice president. The greatest power, as we know, as we don't know, is at the local levels. If you get your
All politics
city
is local.
council, right? You
Yes.
change your city council and they all think like you, or they're all moral people, you're gonna have a good city. And then if you can get them in the state, you're gonna have a good state. So, and that's going to trickle up instead of trickling down. And that's what we need
Exactly.
people to remember. Pay attention to those things. Run for office in those places. And I would like to, one more, continue to interrupt, is that these 231 people who signed this, you included, are courageous people, because as you said, they're checking, there's some bad guys out there. They want to see who they can go after, who are the bad guys. But I would say any of us signing this petition, be equally as courageous, even if it's for the sheer sake of getting 1 million signatures. You know, if we stand together, here's two things that can happen. Okay, sure, they'll know who's on the good guys' side, who's on the bad guys. But the second thing is it's awareness. Once you put your signature on and you're aware of this, and then if the bad guys continue to do bad stuff, all of a sudden you're like, wait, I've got something vested here. And enough is enough. So this is really a big visibility thing too.
And if there's enough of us, they can't take us all.
They can't. They
Right.
can't.
So, the hardest thing was for the I guess the signer or the drafter of the letter is Commander Rob Green, active duty. Commander Green has a book out, Defending the Constitution Behind Enemy Lines, available on Amazon. And the letter actually is an outgrowth from that book. And basically because the book has been cooking, well, the book is actually out new, but the actions that went into the book have been cooking, as I said, for a couple of years with, no response, no action from either
Right.
the DoD leadership or from our congressional
Right.
representatives. They've been told about all these problems for a year and a half or more, and they have done nothing. Maybe make some sympathetic noises in private, but they
Right.
have done nothing.
No actionable things
Right.
to measure.
So who do our congressional representatives answer to? We the people. So that's why we're going to We the People. And I think that, I never really did get around to your last question is, do we have any hope of success? If enough of our fellow Americans sign on to this, yes, we do. We have every hope of success. And the more people sign it, the easier it becomes.
Right.
And the greater the greater the safety and the greater the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It
I
splits
would
up the
encourage,
liability. You know, a million people will take the hits instead of 2 people taking the hits. And yeah, they can't stand again. And so what we're talking about at its core here, Dr. Clagett, is courage. You
yes,
know, we need courageous men and women, and enough of this fear, enough of this. I mean, that's the biggest thing that they use this whole situation in 2020 about anyway, make you afraid. Well, no
that's right.
more. Good men and women are like, I'm not letting fear control my life. I am courageous. And courage doesn't mean only doing what's right when it's easy. It especially means doing what's right when it's hard and you're scared, and
Mhm.
saying, I'm willing to do this for the greater good, for, you know, what would God have you do?
That's right.
You know,
You know, from the final line of our national anthem, the land of the free and the home of the brave. We are the land of the free because we are
of
the
the
home of the
brave.
brave.
Yeah.
And we cannot forget, you know, giving credit to God Almighty either, because in the Old Testament, uh, the apostate northern and southern kingdoms were told, you know, your men of valor, you know, they will fall in battle because I'm going to sell you to your enemies. And they did. So bravery and courage in battle will avail us nothing if we continue as a nation to cast God behind our backs.
Yes.
So, you know, but still, you know, God admonishes us as he did to Joshua, be strong and very courageous,
Yeah.
and believe that the fight is the Lord's.
That's right.
And it is. You know, we simply have to step out on faith
Do our
and
part.
um, do our part and take our risks, even if things go badly for us in this life, which they may well.
Yeah.
But you know, how much better to go down fighting for the truth than to stand before the judge of all the world on that great and terrible day of the Lord and be numbered among the cowards.
Yeah. I mean, that's a powerful place, very, very powerful place to take us.
Yeah.
Because I say to my people all the time, I say to my viewers, I say to my standers, I say to people fighting for their marriages, I say this to my grandchildren, do only what you know to be right and leave the consequences up to God. Sometimes doing what's right is gonna hurt, but the
Yes.
consequences aren't yours. Because a lot of times we manipulate, and I'm careful about that, because most people are like, well, I'm not a manipulator. Actually, most of us are, because like, well, if I do this, then he'll do that. If I make this phone call today, then my spouse will do that. If I do this, then my kid might do that. So instead of manipulating, just use wisdom, of course, but say, let me do what's right. And God, you take it from there. And like you said, some of us will have struggles on this earth that are greater than others. Some of us will be like, oh my gosh, it was a rough go of it. But you know, your glories in heaven are directly proportionate with your suffering on this earth. And that's why I tell people, yeah, if you live a life of comfort and you get to heaven, it'll be fine. But those who lived a life of great struggle and who rose to the challenge will be so much higher in the levels in heaven. And you know, that's really ultimately what we want to do. We live this world, do what's right, get out of here, go there, and live there happily for eternity. So I know we could talk about this topic a lot, but is there any last thing you want to say before I tell people, please, that, you know, click on the link below this video and sign this and pass it to your friends? Is there anything else that you think we should let them know?
I can't think of it, but you know, we appreciate, we the signers, we appreciate all of their support. And I thank you for Christine for amplifying this message. You know, we live in perilous times, but these God sends us these times. I think every generation has had them. We sends us these times because our rising to the challenge is to our credit
Yes.
if we step out in faith and courage. Because if we live comfortable lives, where is the credit to
Yeah.
us? if we overcome nothing, we've accomplished nothing, worthy of acclaim. And so these are our trophies that we will cast at the Lord's feet in the age to come.
Yeah. I want to say one more thing too, before we went on the air, you and I had mentioned, because I'm Catholic, and I asked you if you were, because I couldn't remember, and you're Christian. And one of the things you said is, what's funny is I've noticed, because this wasn't done as a Christian thing. This is done as a group of Americans that want this accountability, but you notice a great number, almost close to 100%, are strong Christians. There's a good correlation there because of what you just said. I would believe it's a Christian faith, that courage that comes only from God, that says, we're asking God for wisdom, we're asking God for courage, and this is why we saw what we saw. We had our eyes opened, and we are willing to put our necks on the line to do what is right, because by God's grace I go with.
So the atheist who believes that there is no God, he's got no incentive to risk his life to accomplish some change for the benefit of others, because as he looks at it, he gets one ride on this merry-go-round, and once he's had that ride, he's done. There is nothing else. Right. Whereas the believer believes that there is something else, and we believe because we cannot keep this life. We exchanged the life we cannot keep for the life we cannot lose. That's right. And so in the perspective of eternity, whatever suffering we endure now is not even worthy of consideration. That's in one of Paul's epistles somewhere. But it'll all be worth it. There is nothing that will not be worth it, worth enduring in order to achieve that.
Amen. Amen, Dr. Clagett. I appreciate what you did. Thank you for contacting me. And I don't know how big a part, this will be, but just as I said, do what's right. Let the consequences go to God. To each of you watching this, I say the same thing. Just go read this letter and think of the courageous men and women that drafted it, that signed it, and then be willing to put your neck on the line. Support them. They're trying to protect you. It's circular. It'll come back to you. Dr. Clagett, you kind of already answered it, but I always end my shows the same way. Name one thing you'd have our listeners do differently as a result of something they heard today.
Beware of being a complacent member of the herd. It is not the herd that will win eternal life, will gain eternal life. The herd is following the wide, comfortable road to hell.
Take the narrow road.
What I would say. Take the narrow road, the difficult path through the straight gate, as John Bunyan described it.
Yeah. God bless you. Well, all of you watching, I think there's nothing more to say. I do ask you to prayerfully consider signing this, sharing the petition, sharing this show, because we can't say, like Dr. Clagett has said things. Share it with your friends and family, and even if you're too afraid of signing, send it to someone else that you think may not be. They don't have to know that you did or didn't. And I'm only saying that because I know some of you are like, I'm not going to risk. Pass it on. That's not too risky. And go, please like and subscribe this show and other shows, not because I'm like, oh, it's all about me, but because I get people like Dr. Clagett, and we have got to get our voices out there, got to get their voices out there. And if you subscribe, every time I have a good show on and someone who's doing something good for God and nation and family and marriage, you'll hear about it and you'll be able to discern whether it's one that you want to share or not. So breakfastwithbacon.com is my website. Sign up to get my newsletter. If you're looking for someone to come in and do seminars, you know, to talk about some of these topics, I'd love to do so. But again, just want to get the news out. Just want to die and have God say, you know, well done, my good and faithful servant. So you'll help me know if that's what I'm doing. So Doctor, I forgot to tell you how I end my shows. You may or may not remember, but I'll do it. I want to thank all of you for watching Breakfast with Bacon. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon, and I want to remind you always to live your life. Do you remember sunny side up? You didn't remember, right? From 2 years ago? Live your life sunny side up, guys.